All right, hello and welcome to the 6th episode of the Extreme Exchange. It's been a while, I took a break, but hey, we all do it, so there's a lot of time now. Anyway, these are my friends from school. This is Elliot, this is Daryl.
Hello.
So I knew them since Sec 3, and we just ORD'd, so it's been like, what, 2, 4, 6 years? Wow, 6 years. Yeah, okay, so Elliot, my dear friend, studying medicine overseas, and Daryl studying dentistry. So the premise, right, is who's Andrew Tate? And I'll start by saying Andrew Tate is a controversial figure that emerged this year, right? It's a this year thing. And his controversial opinions and takes on social issues are what brought him to fame. A lot of videos circulating of him in like interviews or podcasts or whatever, circulating around social media. And this brought mostly bad attention, I think, but and then of course there's good attention as well. So before this whole ordeal, he was a professional kickboxer, right? World champion. I'd say a pretty respectable career. Yeah. So
3 times.
3 times, yeah. So I premise this entire podcast by saying this. Okay, as with all controversial issues, it can get very heated and go out of control quite easily. Okay, so I'm going to frame the entire discussion like this. Andrew Tate has takes on a lot of things. Okay, he talks about a lot of issues, and no one person is correct 100% of the time. Okay, do we agree on that? And no one person has a sizable following that is also completely wrong 100% of the time. Okay, so I think the right way to go about talking about him is to analyze specific takes that he has, and then see what value there is in that particular take. Okay, just because he's wrong on one issue doesn't mean that he's wrong on all issues. Yeah. Okay, it doesn't mean his other opinions are invalid either, and vice versa. I also want to add that you can agree with Andrew Tate's views on some things without agreeing to everything that he says. Okay, and then which is a common mistake that most people make. It's like, what, you support Andrew Tate? Ah, shit, it means you agree with every single thing that he said. Oh, and that's a terrible way of dealing with it. Yeah, and finally, for anyone watching, there's limited time on the podcast, okay? And there's an infinite number of things that Andrew Tate has said that we could cover. So if we don't cover something that you wanted to see, then yeah, too bad. You can just ask me in the comments or whatever. All right.
What do you believe about depression? Do you believe depression is a real thing?
I believe that feeling depressed is real. I don't believe depression as a clinical disease is real, no.
Really?
Correct.
You don't believe people can be clinically depressed?
I think PTSD is very real. Unfortunately, I have some friends who suffer from that. I know that feeling depressed is real. I believe that the number one power you have against these things are trying to take control of your own mind and affecting your own life. I believe that it's not healthy to hand over all your power and believe that depression is an outside disease that you can't affect. I know that when I've had difficult periods in my life, and also many of my friends, like I've said, suffered from PTSD and been through terrible things. I've lived a very difficult life, and I know people who have, that the things that made them feel better is when they woke up and said, you know what, I'm not going to allow this to damage me anymore. I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to get up and I'm going to fight this as hard as I can.
And by the way, on that, I agree.
So we agree.
Right? My favorite speech is the Rocky Balboa one.
Okay, so then we agree. No, we did.
Here's where we don't agree.
Piers.
You don't, no, hang on. You got to let me interject when I don't agree with you, right? Where I don't agree with you is that there's no such thing as clinical depression. There absolutely is.
Well,
it's a proven scientific medical reality. There's a different argument about have we gone a bit too soft, right, in schools and all the rest of it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do I think some people moan and whine too much about their lot in life? Definitely.
Okay.
Are we a victimhood society? 100%.
Okay.
Is there such a thing as clinical depression? Absolutely.
So
and my argument is that if you actually bracket everybody who's not clinically depressed and doesn't have the genuine medical condition, then actually if millions of people are deemed to have depression, the ones who really need the help don't get it. Well, that's my point.
Well, that I would agree with. You're right. I think it's certainly an overused term.
But you don't accept there is such a thing as clinical depression.
No, I don't.
And that to me is a damaging view.
Okay. Well, let me explain why. If someone comes to me and says I'm clinically depressed or I feel very, very sad, I would say the first thing you need to do is stop accepting the identity of a clinically depressed person. Stop accepting you have no control over this. And what you need to do is stop identifying that way, and let's work together to try and fight against it.
But there isn't an eminent doctor in the world who would tell you there is no such thing as clinical depression. Who would not tell you that some people it's simply beyond their control.
I think Johann Hari wrote a book saying exactly that, my friend.
He's not an eminent doctor.
No, but
he's a journalist.
I said depression wasn't real long ago and was attacked for it. Then Johan Hari wrote a book, which
What's it got to do with Johan Hari?
Because he wrote a book proving me right. Most people.
Johan Hari's a journalist.
Sure, and my point is that a lot of people who are clinically depressed are suffering with something in their life, and if you fix the problem in their life, perhaps they won't feel depressed anymore. That's not a disease.
Okay, you know what? You go first.
Yeah, I'll go first. I got a lot to say.
Yeah. Okay.
So, okay, I like to start off by saying that I don't fully agree with Tate because I have a lot of people close to me, like very close to me. I won't say who, but they suffer from depression. So I'm very aware that it is real. And someone once told me, like, it is so real that if they stop taking their medication, if it's bad enough, it almost comes to the point that they have no control over their own actions. If they're driving, they can just drive themselves off a cliff because the chemical imbalance in the brain is too much, and yeah, it just causes them to make decisions that are not themselves. So Andrew Tate saying that everyone who has depression can take control of their life it's a bunch of bullshit because not everyone can do it. They can't simply just work on themselves, get better, and sometimes it's just a clinical illness. Where I think what he's trying to purport, which is positive, is that a lot of people, there's no solid statistic, but a lot of people claim that they're depressed, but they actually can be worked on. So not everyone, but some people can be, and that's why a lot of people emailed him saying, oh, they recovered. But the example that he gave in another video was that someone emailed him and said I have depression, and he asked them to stop the meds and just go to the gym, work on themselves, and then get better, and they did. I don't think they actually had clinical depression, because if they did, they can't simply just stop taking the meds and then get better. And yes, they said they went through all the withdrawal periods, but because I have people close to me that have gone through this, I know that it's not such a simple fix. But yeah, but like the Pierce guy said, in terms of people going soft and then blaming it on depression, and it actually comes to the point that, like, I have some people who have friends that actually use their depression and all these like illnesses as part of their personality to like make themselves seem more interesting. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it actually is like a thing. Then and they convince themselves that they are depressed and they have things to be said about. That is what he's trying to say is bullshit and can be fixed. And if you think about it, right, this is just my own brainstorming, but like compared from last time to now, there's so many new medical like developments, discoveries that prolong health and prolong life. Standard of living has obviously gone up since like the olden days, but yet there are so many more people that are depressed. I feel like, yes, a proportion, I don't know how big, but a proportion of that is real for certain things that they've gone through, but a lot of that is also not real. So him generalizing everyone is wrong, but like towards a certain group of people, there is a valid point.
I do agree that the people claiming that they have depression when they clearly don't, just devalues the importance of mental health, and like it makes the efforts of like all the mental health awareness organizations, everything, seem meaningless, because people just go around claiming that they have mental health illnesses when in reality they're just like
Emo.
Like they're just in a bad phase of their life, or like for example, like take OCD. Okay, like so many people say just because they're perfectionists or they like things a certain way, they have OCD, but they don't actually realize how bad it is to have OCD. Like people who have OCD wash their hands like 20 times a day, 50 times a day, because they cannot stand the feeling of their hands being dirty. People with OCD will literally will not get out of bed if they see things like a certain like in a different way from how they liked it. And yet people go around claiming like, oh, I have OCD, I can only write my letters a certain way, or stuff like that. It just makes like people with actual illnesses seem less like their struggles seem less meaningful, because so many other people claim to have their diseases.
Okay, I think we can all acknowledge that clinical depression exists, okay? Nobody's disputing that. And I don't think I don't think Andrew Tate believes that either. I think he just is phrasing it wrongly. Yeah. Okay, wait, let me call this out. Okay. What I want to focus on is that there are three groups of people. The first group is the group that is actually clinically depressed. The group that requires like medicine to recover, actual hormone imbalances and whatnot. The second group of people is the people that are like depressed, but because it's like feeling-based depressed. And then the third group of people are the people that are not depressed at all and are just like branding themselves as depressed to like you said, like make themselves more interesting and whatnot. Okay, and so I think what's worth discussing, right, is Andrew Tate's view that the mindset that clinical depression doesn't exist is what brings the second group of people out of depression. As in, to tell yourself that there's no such thing as depression, that it's all in your head, and then because of that, it kind of like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like the belief gets you out of it, that kind of thing. And yeah, so the question is that kind of is what he's promoting valid?
Okay, so I think we already established that clinical depression is real because of hormone imbalances. Feeling depressed is different because if I'm correct, the definition for that is like if you go 2 or more weeks without being able to function properly because you're sad or whatever, that is considered feeling depressed. You are depressed. So because in that case there's no real hormone chemical imbalance in your brain, what he's saying may be more valid because having a strong mind, believing that it's just a construct in your head and then getting yourself out of it is actually possible because it is more of a mindset and things that you're going through. It's not a clinical illness that you need medication for. So for that second group of people, I think yes, what he's saying is correct. So if he left out the part that clinical depression does not exist, then yeah, it would hold a lot more.
I feel like what we're missing here is that depression has different levels also. And just because you don't take medicine doesn't mean that it's not clinical. Psychological intervention is still a form of therapy, which is in a way medicine. That's what psychiatry, the field of psychiatry is. So just because you don't take antidepressants or stuff like that doesn't mean that your form of that doesn't mean that your depression isn't as valid as someone who's taking antidepressants.
Okay, but I guess would you say that it's more in your hands in that sense, like it's more controllable for yourself.
I mean, I feel like I've never been to therapy so I wouldn't know, but from what I know is that like what therapy teaches you is methods to help you control certain things. So it's more like someone guides you to be in control of yourself. So I guess yes and no.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I can kind of see why people would think that the mind kind of like the
in a way, Andrew Tate is playing the role of the guide in this sense, but he's in a much less active formula. But he's like what he's doing is also like just literally telling you how to get out of your funk, which is sort of what a therapist would do, in that they will give you like certain like thought patterns which help you to break out of this cycle of depressive thoughts and self-defeating thinking.
Then what do you think of the thought pattern method of like assuming it doesn't exist? Like just telling yourself, I'm not depressed, and like
I feel like if it works, it works now. Or ultimately, it's just like if
I
it
feel
gets
like
you out, it gets you out.
it's up to the individual to know himself, because if the individual goes to a therapist and tells the therapist that he's depressed and he's gone through this and that, the therapist doesn't know what the individual is thinking as well as the individual knows himself. So if the therapist ends up giving wrong advice and diagnoses him as you're depressed or you're clinically depressed, then that's that can have its pros and cons, because the con of that's a con. That's obviously bad because
Yeah, placebo, like
a placebo
depression,
effect, and that's what Andrew Tate is trying to say is bad, and you can get yourself out of.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only drawback for me is the Piers Morgan's point on the fact that people who are actually clinically depressed would just be like, what, like, bro.
Yeah, no, yeah. The con of that is also what he's saying. As much as there are merits, like I just said, the con is that it's also very dangerous because it will send people who are actually clinically depressed even further down the rabbit hole because they think there's no hope, and I'm doing what Andrew Tate says, but it's still not working, and then that can, spiral into maybe something worse like suicide.
I'm not depressed, but I still feel so sad.
Yeah.
So him generalizing it is very dangerous. But I think he's saying it in such an extreme way because, if he said this in like 1980s, it would be quite useless because most people don't fake depression back then. But because it's so prevalent now, he's saying this to make a very strong point, and even though it overgeneralizes a lot of topics, it sends a very strong message to those, those emo kids that are just like making it part of their personality to just stop their bullshit, and so he has to say it in a way that makes it very strong. If he says some people are not, then the people who are just delving in their own sadness and melancholy are just gonna keep doing it because they're like, oh, then I'm part of they'll say, oh, I'm part of the group that is actually clinically depressed, and then his words will mean nothing. So, and yeah, he also just wants to be a very outstanding persona, so he says it like that.
Thank you everybody so much for watching. I am satisfied with this discussion about Andrew Tate. Thank you to both of you for being here as well. And I'll see you in the next episode of The Extreme Exchange. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for having us, Ben.